deal. We're going to play a little game today. The game is, this lecture is going to last as long as it takes me to finish my pre-workout. And then when that's done, this class is over. So yesterday we did law number 13, so now we're going to be doing law number 14. To recap for class, law 13 was when asking for help, appeal to people's self-interest, never to their mercy or gratitude. Now, we're on 14 today. As you see, I took my notes. Now, I used blue today as well as pink for the title. And today's law for the 48 Laws of Power, for you guys watching at home, is pose as a friend, work as a spy. Let me drink a little bit of pre-workout. It is C4 Hawaiian Punch Walmart flavored. Oh, let's make this quick. So the first note that I put was snakes and serpents everywhere. So it's very important that when playing the rat life game, you have to understand that you're a courtier. You're working in a snake den, at least this is my experience, with a bunch of goons, serpents, weasels, and rats. And you're navigating through that, stream, this farm, this cesspit. And the name of the game is this, and I learned this from, his name was Wendell at one of the school districts I worked at. Awesome guy. And I was having an altercation with one of my coworkers. They were just the worst. And I asked him, I said, how do you keep your personal separate from work? How do you separate? How do you not take work home with you? I think was my question. And he said, you understand that this is 8 hours of your day and that's it. As in, I forgot what time I got off back then. I think it was 4 o'clock. He said, 4 o'clock, this job doesn't exist. Kind of like the movie The Hangover.
The weekend, Bud Nick, I don't know you. You do not exist.
I don't know you. You don't exist after this clock out time. And he said the key is to not share any personal information with anybody who's outside. He didn't say this, but I've learned over time. Who's outside of your circle of confidence. As in, with this latest job that I got, I didn't add a single person. I added one who I then removed because I had learned what part of the court this person was a part of, which wasn't one of my kin, wasn't one of my friends. And so I had to remove her from my Instagram. But I didn't add a single coworker to Instagram. I put my Instagram on private. I wanted to make sure that these people did not interject or spy or do any snakery with my personal life and then use that information to jeopardize, employment or, providing for myself or the potential for my future family, my future woman, my future, I don't want to say career within the rat life, but that whole trajectory is you make all of that vulnerable with having snakes within your den who are playing the guise of a friend. I learned this the hard way when I was an undergrad at UCLA, and I posted a story on my Snapchat that one of my friends screenshotted, took to my manager, and then I would then get fired for. So I learned the lesson there. Very small scale. I hated that job. I wanted to leave anyway. I was working as a barista, concessions/barista during my undergrad at UCLA. And I learned the hard way that there are people who you think are your friends who they're literal just snakes in the grass. And so as I've matured over time, I've been able to identify a snake from a mile away. And that's the position that I'm in right now. I don't know if it's just a development in your intuition, but I can look at someone and I can feel if something is off with them. I can feel their energy. People can't conceal too much from me within their character, within their motives, within their, the demons that they try to hide, because I'm just such a light. And so I'm very exposing. So just being in my vicinity is sort of revealing to someone's potential treacherous ulterior motives. So that is what I've learned working within the rat life, is just to keep all of that personal information myself. In fact, I didn't add someone who was an amazing friend of mine. Her name's Alima, present, soon to be not present since I'm no longer going to be working there, coworker, to Instagram, just because even though I knew that she was a true G, right? I was like, we can't, and it was mutual. We both understood that you can't trust anybody until you know that, they're a ride or die. And so I've learned that the hard way with friends. I've learned that the hard way with, coworkers who I thought their character to be better than, what they had revealed to me. And so I would impart that for food for consideration, that you don't go down this law learning it the hard way. So I would take inventory of the people who you consider to be close friends of yours and what their actual motives are. And this is actually a really good lesson to extrapolate beyond just the workplace. But I learned this from Greg Plitt. He was talking about cutting the fat out of your life. One of the decisions that I made last year was, dude, I cleaned house. As in everyone who, I took inventory of the value people offer me in my life. Meaning, is it just a give and take relationship? As in all I'm doing is giving and all they're doing is taking. Are they in my life just because they're funny? Just because we have fun when we get drunk or when we do drugs? Just because, we have a good laugh. And I learned after doing that inventory, I was surrounded by fucking losers. I was surrounded by what would be my indulgence was there every day. And so I was surrounded by drug addicts, and I was surrounded by alcoholics, and I was surrounded by people who have settled within their relationships, within their financial ambitions and pursuits, and people who are completely content with a life of perpetual mediocrity. And I learned the hard way, you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I also learned the hard way that your friends are a reflection of your standards. So when I'm surrounded by fucking losers, who am I? Just in the vicinity of that group, right? You get association by default. So I learned that it was affecting every part of my life, man. It was affecting my ambition, the pride I took in my appearance, the effort that I would output, whether that was in my work, whether that was in not so much relationships, but in my training and everything. Think of the 5 people that you're the aggregate of as a thermostat, and you have these people who are these like just weak temperature people. I want somebody who's on. Do you know what I'm saying? Who's all or none. Who's not a fucking dim light, right? Who's not half-assed effort. Who doesn't ever say the forbidden words that we talked about in this university of good enough, or I'm tired, who feels sorry for themselves, who plays the pity party. I don't want any of that garbage anywhere near me. So I would encourage you this year, 2025, to do that inventory. Take inventory of the people who are in your life and ask yourself, what are they giving me? Great quote, it's kind of crude, but it's kind of spot on. If they don't give you income, inspiration, or orgasms, they don't belong in your life. And again, crude statement, but when you distill it down, the only people who have access to me provide me one of those things, and, not to incest. No, I'm not getting orgasms from family. It's the family who have access to me. They have to inspire me. As in, there are siblings that I have that do not have access to me simply because they have chosen to solely invite negativity into my life. So I have even communicated to them, I'm keeping you, I still love you, but you're at arm's reach. You know what I'm saying? You're on a need to know basis on any updates or things going on in my life. And it has to be that way. The reason is, if you consciously invite negativity from these weeds into your garden, you'll find that you won't even be able to harbor gratitude for the other people who are just stoked to be a part of your life. The people who invite nothing but love and compliments and honoring you and make you feel so effortless to love, you won't even be able to feel, I'm speaking from personal experience, gratitude and appreciation for that relationship because of these other weeds who are plaguing your garden. So I think that's good food for thought to preface this lecture. Is a really good idea, a really good takeaway is to take inventory of the friends within your life and ask yourself, what are they providing for my life? Is this someone I want to be? And that was the biggest thing. I looked at my surroundings of the people who were my friends and I said, I don't want to be like any of you. I don't want the life that you have. I don't want to go where you're going. I don't want the mindset that you've chosen to adopt. And when you it's a lonely path when you decide to do this, because I've chosen, and I'll always stand by this, to sacrifice company for the sake of where I'm going. Do you know what I'm saying? I know so many people who they're in an ocean of friends, a friend group, and maybe they're loved by them, maybe this, but they're not going anywhere because of the people that they've chosen to surround themselves with. They've forfeited their potential from inviting all of these weeds and parasites and depressed and unhappy, which was one of the laws. avoid the unhappy and the unlucky, right? So very, very, very good audit to do. I would highly recommend it, even though it's going to be one of the hardest things you do, because it is hard to tell family to fuck off. It is hard to cut off your friends. It's hard to be a complete ghost. And when I say complete, you have to be so rigid in the people who have access to you. And I've had to learn that the hard way. As in, there are people right now who will DM me and DM me and DM me for years at a time. And I've made it a precedent. You do not have access to me anymore, period. And it has to be that way. And in the past, people have always taken that open channel for granted, you know? And that's the only way you put value on your attention, is restriction, is limiting it. As in, if every person has access to you, you're not that Ferrari behind the glass in the showroom. You know what I'm saying? You're on the fucking clearance rack for any commoner to come and take as they please. Do you understand? So if you set the precedent and remind yourself who the fuck you are, and this isn't an ego play, this isn't arrogance, this is just remembering your value that has been so distilled, so watered down from people who have taken advantage of it over time. Okay. I'd recommend the audit. Next. Arm yourself with a little knowledge and your aim improves. And I put how to become a 7-time gladiator. So the whole point of posing as a friend, working as a spy, is for information. The gift of information is anticipation. And I wanted to give a great video game example, because if you guys don't know this, I was a 7-time gladiator when I played the game World of Warcraft. I was a Destro Warlock and a Resto Druid and a Disciplined Priest. Now you might be wondering, Tarek, Professor, how did you become Gladiator? How did you become 7-time Gladiator on 3 different characters, 3 different classes? You know. The reason was this. Not only did I commit years of my life to that game, but the way that I got to be the best, and arguably one of the best players in the entire world, and my brother can corroborate this because I competed against and beat BlizzCon champion arena players, which is the #1 tournament within the world for the best arena players in the game. Anyway, this is Tarek in his prime. The reason that I was so good is because I would anticipate what the enemy would do before they did it. And so I would position myself to be ready to combat whatever I knew that they were going to do. Anticipation is the greatest strategic maneuver in the game of life, and you can apply this to anything. It doesn't just have to be a video game. You can apply this to when you're going to sell a stock or when you're going to buy it. You know, if you're going to short something, if you're going to go long. I don't do stocks, but you understand that premise. Position is power. Anticipation is power, because if you're not in a state of anticipation, you're in a state of reacting. You're reacting to circumstances, conditions, and events. And so you're at the whim of the conditions of life. So the way that you overpower that is you anticipate the storm to come, right? Then you can be ready for winter, right? You can prepare ahead of time, okay? So knowledge, even a little bit, is power, For, I heard a door open outside. I'm getting paranoid from my pre-workout now. For the gift of anticipation that it gives you to then go about your next steps. Do you understand? And what separated, not to continue on the nerd tangent, but what separated the best players in that video game from the worst ones are the best players would be anticipating and the worst ones would be reacting. If you react constantly in business, if you react constantly within your relationships, if you react constantly in just your job, you'll never be ahead, right? You'll never be able to succeed because you're constantly on the defense. You're constantly on, waiting for the enemy to attack you. And then it's very easy to fall into the victim character when you decide to play life playing that class. You understand? Do you see how I tied it in? Class in the video game, the character class that you play in real life. That's pretty good. Next, in the rat life, this is easily achieved, so we're talking about posing as a friend, working as a spy, by being an agreeable yes man. This is how I was able to elicit so much information discreetly from my serpent snake superior. As in, I was just, and I've done this in other jobs that I've worked, and it's one of the most powerful things that you can do when you're in the courtiership of the rat life and you're utilizing these laws. is simply playing the fool to fool the fools. As in, you're very agreeable. You're a yes man. You're their biggest fan. You're laughing at their stupid ass jokes, and you make these people feel like they're, smart and witty and funny when they're fucking clowns, right? But in that character that you're playing, they will openly reveal information about themselves. And I got my serpent to do that just effortlessly, because you get to see their walls down. And a lot of times when you're playing, if you view life as a video game, it's all a game, especially in the rat life. It's all made up. When you're playing with these characters who have greed and who have arrogance and who have pride, it's like if you've seen the movie The Big Short, where I forget the actor that plays Evan Almighty, Steve Carell. He's like, I don't understand. Why are they confessing?
I don't get it. Why are they confessing?
They're not confessing.
They're bragging.
And then the other brokers, they're like, I think they're brokers. They're finance guys. And he says, they're not confessing, they're bragging. When they were talking about how they're giving houses for people who don't have high FICO scores or any proof of income before the 2008 market crash. If you haven't seen that movie, it's a great movie. It's called The Big Short. Brad Pitt's in it as well. But it all comes from being an agreeable yes man. From these people who are arrogant, who have pride, they're snakes, and they're so smug that they actually have joy and happiness from sharing their stupidity and their arrogance. And so that's just an easy and effortless way to implore these laws, is by being that yes man. I find that if you can do that, then number one, you can elicit all the information that you want from them. But number two, you can rise very quickly, which is something that I chose not to do within my rat life, because it got to the point where they pushed the envelope of disrespect, of complete antithesis of integrity or morality, and I had to be that pillar of courage for the other coworkers who either lacked the courage or didn't have the voice. As in, one of my greatest gifts is my gift of articulation. As in, I don't need representation for myself to defend myself, or to call out treachery. As in, I can sit across from someone and detail out exactly the behavior that they know that they're doing. And that's one of the things that one of the skills that I didn't have when I was younger. And anyone who's a foreigner, they can understand this feeling where you lack the ability to express yourself. It is the most frustrating thing. And I was thinking about it yesterday. If you've ever seen the movie The Professor and the Madman, where he teaches this girl to read, and she's kind of ashamed about it because she doesn't know how to read. And the whole point of the movie is about books. That's why it's one of my favorite movies. And he said, you don't understand. Words are freedom. Like language, learning to read, learning to speak, it's freedom. As in, if you know how to articulate yourself, and you couple that with, learning the skill of sales or persuasion or negotiation, you can get any partner that you want, relationship. You can get any income or financial status that you want. You can have any quality of life that you want. It's literal freedom. If you don't have the ability to articulate yourself, to speak, to understand, to listen, to not argue, debate with others without resorting to name calling, and you can actually get your point across, and you can actually influence other people by getting other people to understand your point of view and then adopt it as their own. Or like I've had to maneuver within the snake den that I worked at, where, oh my God, it was sickening. But you have two serpents who are in positions of authority, they're leaders, and they're pitching and catching their treachery with you. It's like a 1 versus 2. And I would have to maneuver my speech to show them how, despite their attacks, that what I was doing was in alignment within their best interests and meeting deadlines and all this. But that comes from a very skilled opponent in the game of articulation, right? So I can't stress that enough, and I know this is kind of a tangent, but words are power, words are freedom. And so that's one of the things that I love about reading, is it sharpens my speaking ability, right? My processing ability, my articulation ability. And if you don't have those sharpened, you'll find the most defeating position in life, where it's, you want to say something, you know that this is wrong intrinsically, and yet you lack the ability to express yourself, to call out treachery and tyranny when it presents itself. And so as a result, you're subject to it. Do you understand? So that's another huge takeaway, I think, from this lesson, is don't lack the ability, or don't forego the effort to develop your skill in articulation, which honestly just comes from the way that I've been able to develop my gift, if you would call it that, over time, is by having conversations with people with opposing views than myself, particularly when it comes to my stance on, depression, or being a victim, or just, especially if you travel, you'll get the ones who are just super anti-capitalist. Having conversations with other people who have completely different lenses of life, just based on the bubbles that they've lived in, the experiences that they've had up until this point, you'll be able to really bridge the gap of your potential of articulation, in my opinion. Next. The key: your ability to suppress yourself in the conversation to make others talk endlessly about themselves, inadvertently. I don't know if you've seen that. It's like a British lady goes up to a neighbor.
Your son has inadvertently, we hope.
Your son inadvertently, I hope, sent a photo. Reveal their intentions and plans. Okay, so the idea is to suppress yourself. This ties in with being a yes man. The whole name of the game here is, and this is one of the laws within this book. I don't know if we've covered it. I think we did. It's speak less than necessary. The more you can get another person to speak, the longer chance they have to reveal themselves. And I put this is excellent with dating. If you just let the other person talk, they will reveal everything about themselves. And it's so important, particularly as a man, if you're watching this, when the most important decision you'll have to make in choosing your spouse, choosing the woman that you want to be the mother of your children and your wife. And so when you're doing the courting process, if I can say you're doing it properly for your wife, not, hoeing around, not doing, I don't want to say wasting time, but your prerogative is for life, right? For marriage, for your wife, for your woman. When you're assessing someone, you're able to glean everything that you need to know about them. And I put this in a later bullet point, but I'll talk about it now. My favorite date with a woman has to be the gym. Seemingly unconventional. I've gotten people who that's a terrible first date, and I couldn't disagree more. And the reason is, not that I care about a woman being a gym girl. In fact, it's not one of my preferred physique attractions. I go more for Brazilian, but there's an airplane outside. I always tell people, if you haven't experienced a Brazilian woman, not just simply sleeping with them, but their passion, their excitement, their carpe diem, hearts, you haven't lived, let alone their physiques. But that's an aside. In the gym, right, in an hour, I've been able to find out everything that I possibly need to know about a person, whether or not they would be the kind of woman who I'm looking for. As in, if a woman ever says in the gym, how many more sets do I have left? Red flag. If they ever say, are we done yet? Red flag. If they ever stop shy of their best, red flag. If I tell them to give me 2 more and they either complain or they give up or they quit, red flag. Let's extrapolate the reason why. If you can't show me that you have the ability to tolerate stress in an environment that all of the variables are controlled, then it's the perfect foreshadowing of your stress tolerance later in life, later in the relationship, right? As it progresses. As in, if they can't handle this, if they give up at the first sign of struggle here, what happens when you have the first argument, right? What happens when you have the first real, event or circumstance that's going to impact the relationship? Are you just going to give up? Are you just going to quit? The answer is yes. I learned it from Robert Greene. People never do something once. It's so important. And I've coached people who they've had partners who have cheated, and I've said that exact same thing. Or I've seen someone who I presume to be a friend who shared that information with me, and then I was very, very cautious, right? Because anybody who does something once will do it again, right? People reveal their patterns. So it's very important that when you're, I don't want to use the word assessing, when you're choosing your person, right? The person who you want to be a part of your team, at least the litmus test that I use is they have to have no quit, right? If I say, give me one more rep, they're trying to give me 2 or 3 more. They have to not give up, right? They have to be able to persevere through adversity, right? And that's why I love the gym so much, is because you develop all of those virtues in an environment where all of the stress is completely controlled. And the beauty about this is, if you consciously invite all of the hardship and adversity and stress in that environment, then you're ready and prepared mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally for stress and turmoil when it will inevitably arise within life outside of the gym, right? The same woman who's that warrior, who has that never say die attitude, who doesn't give up here in the gym, she's not going to quit when the going gets tough here later in life, later in the progression of the relationship. So I love how this extrapolates, pose as a friend, work as a spy, when it comes to dating. Because, and again, you can achieve this just in a date outside of the gym by just saying less than necessary and allowing the other person to speak, because they'll reveal everything in terms of their, habits, in terms of their vices, in terms of their ambitions, in terms of their, status or relationship with God, or the omission of that. Everything that you could possibly want to know. So this is what I'm talking about when I say knowledge and anticipation is power, right? But I want to say that one more time, just for the viewers listening, because if you're trying to close the gap of who you are and the potential of who you can be, the right person, this is speaking guys or girls, is going to 100x your life. And I saw it in such a great video, and they said, you're doing so great just where you are right now, but imagine what level you're going to operate when you're loved properly, when you're filled with encouragement, when you're given actual help, actual support, when you're able to operate on someone whose cup is not completely filled, who's overfilled with love, with confidence, with comfortability in your own skin, with financial support and help, and when I was thinking about all that, it's like, it's so effortless to see how guys who are married, who have their person, or women who have their guy, who have that, I think of it as a light. I think the right person can make you shine 10 times, 100 times brighter, right? The right person, the right woman, speaking as a man, they can breathe so much confidence in your ability. When you hear that quote, she makes me feel like $1 million. What does that mean? She makes me feel like I can conquer the fucking world. Because when you view someone through the lens of love, you're viewing them as the potential of who they can be. I know this because I've done this with people in the past. And this is how I choose to live my life, is I choose to, it's actually a really beautiful thing, and I learned it from Jordan Peterson, that love is just simply belief. And that's why I love the mantra of Rat Life. It starts with belief, right? Because I get to see the potential of who this person can become. And then I get to breathe that potential within them. And I get to constantly reassure them of this visual. And the beauty about planting a seed like that is if you can make that person either believe that for themselves or trust you enough to then, believe it one day, then it'll start the success cycle. Belief, potential, action, results. They'll tap into more potential. They'll take more action, and eventually it'll become that self-fulfilling prophecy. Well, they'll realize the potential from the confidence that you breathed into them. It's so cool. So, moral of the story is get your ass in the gym and find somebody who has no quit. I saw a really good video. It's like, what kind of spouse are you looking for, or should you seek? It's the one who you would want to go to war with, right? Because that's the whole game. If you're looking at this, when I'm thinking of the right partner, dude, I'm thinking about the next 50 years, right? I want someone who I can trust to go into the arena with me, right? Who's not gonna give up, who's not gonna shortchange, who's not gonna quit, who's going to literally fight to the end, right? So very, very, very important. And that's why I love the idea that this law is so excellent when it comes to dating or just maneuvering through the courting process in terms of assessing who it is that you want, right? And it goes so far beyond who you want as your chick, who you want to date. Who do you want your daughter to become? And that was such a powerful insight that somebody gave me. It's like, your daughter is going to end up like their mother. And it's very, very true. So And I understand that people who have not best relationships with mothers, they can counteract that. But the woman who I'm looking to take on, right? I want my daughter to emulate that, because that's who they're being raised by and developed by in a healthy relationship. I'm not talking about, I'm not having no snake in my garden. You know what I'm saying? I'm not having no serpent, no left woke, pronoun, elemental P, vaccinate. I'm not having any of that garbage poisoning my child. Do you understand? But that's an aside. A complete aside, but can I say that I just love our current administration? It is just cleaning house. Pride flags banned from post offices, all federal agents having to remove the she, he, the elemental P from their signatures of their emails, just cleaning house on all of the illegals that are in this country. Just, my God, a week in, it's just, we're back. America is back. I love it because the pendulum swung so far left. It was left or right. What I'm saying is the pendulum of insanity so far this way. When we're talking about the gender is a spectrum, and you're just like, Jesus Christ, this is what my kids are learning. Or with the pride flag in the classroom, you have a 5, 6, 7-year-old learning about sex ed, learning about trans. It's fucking poison. And the worst part is it's attacking and targeting children. I was saying this to someone who used to be my friend, that you're not pursuing financial abundance and prosperity and freedom for just your freedom. It's for the safety of your children. Because if this is the path, and it seems to be that public education, this is the road it's going down, you need to protect your children from this garbage and from this insanity. So I'm laughing and joking about who I want, as my partner and who I don't want, but with all seriousness, there is no world where I'm allowing consciously the poisoning of the mind of my child or my children in the future. And so that's the importance of this university. It's nothing but beautiful literature, beautiful mental nourishment for your mental garden, So I'm not inviting any toxicity, any weeds. And this is the worst. The treachery of inception is when you can plant one of these fucking sinister seeds that eventually leads to a child castrating himself chemically, right? And this is something that's been happening prevalent in the United States. It's so garbage and sinister and satanic that these motherfuckers have been able to get away with the past 4 years. No longer. So when I say the importance of what we're discussing, it doesn't end at you. I don't give a shit what your predispositions are. I'm thinking about the next generation to come, right? The poison that you might be passing down to them. So it all, if you can take it from a serious lens, it all is so important, the partner that you're choosing and what values and morals and ideologies that they're abiding by, that they're going to instill onto your child. So it's important of having somebody who aligns with your values and your ideologies. And so we take a law like this, on the surface level lightly, pose as a friend, work as a spy. It's like, no, I can't have complete certainty, but I want to have as much trust as I can that I'm trusting the safety of my child's mind to my spouse, right? And when I'm not in the room. So I want them to instill morality with discipline, with hard work, with perseverance, with the gift of adversity, right? Because of all the virtues that you get. The gift of all the virtues that you get from going to the gym. Discipline, work ethic, patience, consistency, heart, how to overcome failure, how to be alone, right? Virtues that you cannot exalt anywhere else. And those all extrapolate, right? You can apply that same effort to your business, to your entrepreneurial journey and venture, to your relationships, to your academics. So very, very important. Do you see the importance of these laws? The brilliance of the maneuver is that they will mistake your interest in them for friendship, so that you not only learn, you make allies. There's a quote from the book, but it's very true. People like people who like them. So if you're posing as that sort of spy and you're that yes man at work, and I know this firsthand from working with my serpent before I just called her out on all her abuse, you can get things that you want. Like if there was an item that I wanted, it's no problem. If there was a food thing, no problem. You have so much more agreeability and influence in someone who has the idea that you're in their court, within their confidence, and then you can manipulate them at will. Not that I was manipulating, but you can get everything that, just like we talked about with Zig Ziglar, you can get everything that you want right? By helping the other person get everything that they want. And if what they want is just a yes man, is just someone who's the best representation of them, then you'll get everything that you want by default. So people like people who are interested in them. It's a great way that you'll find you'll be able to influence when it comes to sales or seducing someone, which is another book, within courting, within relationships. The importance of standing guard at the doorway of your mind to opposed friend, i.e. mentor. So I don't want to say made the mistake, because I don't think there are mistakes. There are just required trials, tribulations, and lessons that just need to be learned, on your path. And one of the things that I had to learn was the naivety of giving full trust to people who pose as a mentor. And I went through this entrepreneurial thing that was one of the affiliations with my school district, and it was like a little entrepreneurship boot camp. And you had access to all of these mentors, right? People who were, seven-figure, not incomes, but they had seven figures, and, they were public speakers and all this. And so I'm just open and about, rat life and about what I'm doing and where I'm going, where I want to go, just trying to seek someone who's, further along on the path to close the gap, right? And I would find time and time and time again that they didn't give a shit about you. They had an ulterior motive the whole time. And so it's very important, the idea that you implore in every aspect of your life. Stand guard at the doorway of your mind. We learned that from Jim Rohn, from one of the first books. The importance of that is you don't allow for the manipulation of others, right? Good quote. If you don't have a plan, you'll be used by someone else as a part of their plan. I learned that from Greg Plitt. It's very, very true. If you don't know where you're going, and if you don't have perspicacity, right? If you don't have that ability to perceive, then you'll be manipulated at will by other people who want to use you as a part and as a means to their agenda, right? So you can apply that to the political context. I was on Instagram today, and it's just garbage and garbage and garbage and garbage. Thousands and thousands and thousands of videos about people talking about the Luka Laker trade. And all I'm doing when I'm watching this, seeing how easily people can be emotionally manipulated, how easily people can be so fucking distracted. It's fascinating how easy it is to do something like make this video, or to stay consistent with my diet, or consistent with my gym, or the progression of rat life. Is we live in a world where everyone is 1000% distracted, and they're so easily made distracted, and they're so easily to emotionally manipulate. And why? They're allowing manipulation from their enemies. Who are their enemies? People who want to use them to distract them, to keep them asleep, right? Very, very good quote. This is probably from this book. I allow manipulation from my enemies to see where they want me to go. And I use my mind to break the trap and punish the perpetrator. That's the current situation that I'm in right now with my serpent snake superior. Someone who thought that they've been manipulating me, that they can manipulate me, when the entire time I've never been oblivious to it. I've just stayed quiet. I've just been that sort of yes man. I've just played the fool to fool the fool. Do you understand? I don't allow myself to be manipulated by snakes and serpents, right? I take pity on them, because I always ask myself, it's very sad that you feel the need to resort to this, or you feel the need to do this to begin with. And I've had this experience with so many people throughout the course of my journey, or people who just think they're taking advantage of me, think they're, pulling one over me, when it's all a conscious decision that I'm choosing to allow you in my life. I'm choosing to allow to live with me. I'm choosing to allow to, scam me financially, because I know the life that they're going back to, right? I had this when I was in Macedonia, and I was with these kids, and I spent like $20, and they thought that they were, getting one up over me. And it's like, I understood where I'm going back home to, right? And I understood where they're going the next day. And so I just look at them with a lens of pity, because I have such a greater time horizon. It's very unfortunate that you feel the need to manipulate or scheme or scam when you could just choose to be a good, great, moral, loving person, very generous person, and then in turn gain a relationship, a friendship, a bond for life. So it's always disappointing when you see people choose to be less than the caliber of man or woman that you know they have the potential to be. So a lesson that I've had to learn also the hard way is just to take people at face value and to no longer put stock into the vision or the image of the potential that person has to become that, you know, you keep insisting on. It's just at a certain point, I learned this from, her name's Carrie, used to be one of my good friends. She said, people will either become that vision because I'm viewing people in the lens of love, which is just believing the potential of who they can be. So she said, they'll either become that one day or they'll never become that at all, right? That's up to them, right? It's not up to you. You can only breathe so much confidence into their ability, into their potential. You can only do that so much. It's up to them to sort of turn the key, start the engine, and close that gap. You can't save them. So at a certain point, you just have to accept the truth of who they are and of where they are right now. So I hope that helps. I hope that provides decent insight. But that's the importance of standing guard at the doorway of your mind. You don't allow for manipulation from your enemies. And so I would always do that. I would allow manipulation to see where they wanted me to go, and then I would use my mind to break the trap. And in terms of punish the perpetrator, good scene from the movie The Revenant, where Leonardo DiCaprio says, vengeance is in God's hands. And that's the current position that I'm in right now with work. I used to want, vengeance, vindication, all this for my serpent superior, for all of the abuse that I've endured by her hand. For sort of justice for all the abuse that she's implored on other people with zero accountability, right? But I know that karma is 1000% real, and this person will get exactly what's coming to them, right? And all of the serpents and snakes. It's just I learned this from Jordan Peterson. He said in his 25 years of clinical psychology practice, never has had a client gotten away with anything ever once. So anything that you're doing that you think you're, hiding or getting away with, sometimes the time delay between the karma will be so delayed you won't even see causation, correlation. You won't even see that what you've done and the result of it. Because the result of it could happen a year, 2 years later, and it could be in the loss of a limb or of a family member or a disease or something, and then it's why me, pity party, victim, bitch, right? When in reality, 100% accountability that you thought you could get away with later on. So I've foregone the need for vengeance or any of that. That's in God's hands. I know that I'm aligning with God, with truth, with light, with good, with love. And so I know that that will return to me tenfold. And I leave it at that. Next, you can also utilize sincere confessions to ply vulnerability. This is one of my notes. People feel safe to let go with someone who opens up, and I put appears to be for the sake of this law, because that's what he's talking about, giving false confessions. But I've had this when I've traveled where we're about halfway done with the pre-workout, where people will have all these walls. And the easiest way that I've found to get people to put their walls down is, number one, doing something like make these videos, and so a third party watching it. It's not an attack on them because what I'm saying has nothing to do with them. And so when I talk about an idea that has nothing to do with them, then they get to listen in not defense, but in reflection. Because it's something that has exactly to do with them and their actions and their situation, but it's not about them directly. So they're in a receiving stance where they'll listen in, ponder, consider, reflect, absorb, apply, hopefully, heal, grow, attract, right? That's the sequence of it. But when talking with them directly in a one-on-one, coaching or consultation or just, conversation, I find that people are so receptive and made more vulnerable by you imparting vulnerability, as in you offering a confession and I think people can honestly gauge sincerity. So when he talks about, appearing to give a sincere confession, but it's just a lie, that's a professional liar, snake, rat, and that's not a persona that you want to take on. You don't want to be the guy who's a professional, deceptor. Excuse me, a professional liar. It's not a trait that you want to develop. But somebody who, feels so secure by being honest, by being open, by being vulnerable, you'll find that only from that vulnerability. And partially it's with making these YouTube videos, by choosing to allow yourself to be seen, right, for who you are. That is the only way you'll get people to love you for you and to trust you enough to open up themselves. Because if you just have this wall, you know, then no one will feel safe to confide in you. But you have to, I would say, reveal yourself enough to show your character flaws, or to show your insecurities, or to show your weaknesses, to confess that you're not this perfect specimen of a being. And I've found in my experience that the more that I open up, the more that I'm honest, the more other people feel it easy and effortless to open up with me. Also, if you can bridge the gap of trust where a person knows that they're not going to be met with any sort of judgment or condemnation, they'll be even more encouraged and feel even more safe to be open and honest and vulnerable with you. What I found to be a challenge are the people who are just so scared that they, judging by it, because all they have as their lens is judging by past experiences where people have used information given to them in confidence against them and to judge them, criticize them, and condemn them. They project that past onto you. And so they're so convinced, right, that you are going to break their heart, that you're going to leave, that you're going to, you know, give up on them, that you're going to judge them, that you're going to, you know, run away or hate them if they were honest with you with who they were. And so I found that those are the hardest people to reach, because their wall is so fortified, their fear is so great, that you have to let them sort of heal on their own time. You have to let them come to you with openness, vulnerability, when they're ready. And you just have to sort of respect their journey, still give them that unconditional love them at a distance, but then let go of the outcome, because that's on them. You know what I'm saying? And the beauty about that is, if you can bridge that gap of trust, I saw it in a great scene, it was of God, where this person was like in tears, like there's no way he's going to still love me after I've, you know, gone so astray. And the second that this guy came back, he was like this Asian sort of guy, but it was the personification of God. He hugged him immediately. And it was just like, it was just emulating God's infinite grace, infinite love, infinite patience that he has with us. And I love that idea that in our pursuit, I'm not Christian, but I 100% align with the pursuit of becoming Christ-like, which the whole premise of this book is literally to just do that, which I haven't read yet, but that's going to be the commitment that I start in June, where the whole book is just to become Christ-like. What does that mean? To be a leader amongst leaders, to have the utmost empathy, to have the utmost integrity, to have the utmost I would say truth within your word, consistency within your word, consistency within your actions, aligning with what you say, what you do, right? I see so many people who are these Christians, right, who have no morality, no integrity, no pride within their words, no honor, and so it's just like, it's all garbage. So I don't like the stance of religion, but I love the stance of aligning and walking with God and choosing to be Christ-like in that sense. So I don't know how I got on that tangent. We were talking about vulnerability and honesty. When that mentor, I think the best way that you can reflect God's patience and grace is by giving that same gift to other people. Do you know what I'm saying? And I've always said this with people who have been out of my life, I've cut out of my life. I've said to them, my door is always open. And what I have meant by that is, you're out of my life so long as you're continuing to act in this manner. But my door is always open for when you decide to change, right? When you decide to have accountability for your actions, when you decide to apologize for what you've done, when you decide to not walk the path of the coward. And I've had people where I literally cannot have them in my life because they make me feel like a hypocrite for what I stand behind. And so if I talk about courage and they demonstrate cowardice, they cannot be in my life. If I talk about integrity and they demonstrate the omission of morality, they cannot be in my life. So I would rather be alone than be a hypocrite, because I'm made a liar by the people who I choose to tolerate within my garden. This battery's gonna die, so let me change it 1 second. If memory serves, I did not charge this one, so this is actually gonna be interesting to see if this works out. But Do you understand? So I love the idea of giving people the gift of grace and patience and forgiveness to sort of reflect the same divine, godlike gestures that are gifted to us. And I honestly think God smiles when he sees that, when he sees a pale reflection of his own exalted character and purity. If you can walk in that path, I think you're doing a pretty good thing. So I think that's the whole quest, is if we can get more people to not be Muslim or Christian or Jewish, to be Christ-like, right? To be a leader amongst leaders, right? To walk in the path of unparalleled integrity, character, pride within their work ethic, right? Heart, perseverance, courage, standing up even if they're the one standing alone, right? So I think all of that courage will be just as inspiring as cowardice. Next, my favorite gym date for all it reveals, 1000%. Armed with this kind of knowledge, you can predict their actions in the future. So you can apply that from the gift of anticipation from a video game. You can apply that to relationships. Like I said, if you can't tolerate stress here, and if you show me that you're going to give up at every hardship here, then I can only expect that later on down the road, that you're going to give up when the going gets tough here. I want someone who has that never say die attitude. It's just like, I don't care how hard it is, we're going to fucking work it out, right? Because it's not me against you, it's you and I against this problem. And that's what I really love and appreciate about older relationships, like my grandparents' generation. My grandparents were married for 62 years. Because people back then, they didn't just go through things together, they grew through things together, right? You don't just go through, you grow through. And in this instant gratification, dating app swipe culture, constantly looking for the greener grass, onto the next, nobody tries anymore. And so the strength of those bonds, of those relationships, and exacerbated by getting watered down when women they dilute the ability to bond pair correctly from having a plethora of partners. You don't have that same strength of a bond that people from, my grandparents' generation had, where it's like high school sweethearts married for 62 years versus the one who they're, with another person every week, right? It's just, why stick it out with this person when I could just go on to the next. And so it's hollow, man. It's very unfortunate that the world that we live in today, when it comes to just modern, just dating relationships, or just the ideologies that are aligned with modern dating. That's the challenge of being an old soul, traditional soul in a modern world. Next, always give vague, personal information within the rat life. That's a huge tip that I would offer for food for thought, food for consideration. When you're working the 9 to 5, treat people like they are on an as needed to know basis. As in, you don't share your personal life, you don't share the plans that you're doing over the weekend or the trips that you're going on. I found, particularly with the greater the serpent is, they'll use your vacation and sick days as threats, and and that was the biggest thing within my serpent, actually wanting me to fucking beg to use my sick days and vacations. And I'm just like, dude, you are such a serpent snake. And I love the whole hero's journey that I've been on, where I've escaped the rat life. I went back to working the rat life, kind of like Neo, where now that you know how the game works, you have sort of superpowers to impart within the video game, within the Matrix, when you've been unplugged, so to speak, when you've seen behind the curtain, like the Wizard of Oz, to where I wouldn't share any more personal information with these people, because I learned that mistake the hard way in the past. So, or where I would befriend people who would then betray me on social media that I deemed, my friend. And so the best thing that I could share, or that I could encourage, and this isn't to be cold, this isn't to be, I don't want to say impersonal or lack, sociability, social ability, is that a word? Not in the slightest. It's just understanding that there are very, very, very few people that you can trust, particularly within the rat life, who don't have, ulterior means or negative motives, because a lot of people don't view life as they view life as a zero-sum game. There's a lot of people, they want to see you win, but not more than them, because they're very insecure people. They're under the facade, the illusion that if you win, it means they're losing. They view life as a zero-sum game, that if you get more market share, more piece of the pie, it means they get less, right? They don't operate from a state of abundance or security or, the stance that I'm going to clap for you, I'm going to clap for others until it's my turn to win, because they're just very weak mentally, spiritually, physically. Beings, very insecure. So at least that's my experience within the rat life, particularly working in a district office where you get to see, you get to really see it all blown up, because if you work in like a huge place, 40,000 or 4,000 people, whatever, very hard to see that. But when you're in this, such a intimate group, intimate office, then you get to see like that Renaissance courtier play out in real time. And you get to see these weasels, and you get to see these snakes, and you get to see these rats that you otherwise, this would still be happening, but you would never know. This would be behind closed doors, but I'm in those doors. So do yourself a favor and keep your personal life personal. Last quote. By feeding people wrong information, then, you gain a potent advantage. While spying gives you a third eye, disinformation puts out one of your enemy's eyes. A cyclops, he always misses his target. So that is law number 14, which is pose as a friend, work as a spy. But it's not even that. It's sharpening and harnessing the power of your discernment. And you'll find that the greater your discerning ability, your discernment skill, the more quality of people that you'll have within your garden. There's a good quote that if you have more than a handful of friends, you have no friends. And I think it's very, very true. When I've done the inventory of who could I call at 3 a.m. who would be here, that goes down to one person, at least here in Southern California. That's my brother. Like, if it was 3 a.m. and I needed help, him and maybe Alima, two people who I could call, who would be here, right? Gun to my head if I needed them. And it's like, a lot of people know a lot of people. Like, I know a lot of people. A lot of people know me. But they're not real friends. They're not those ride or dies. They're not the person who's, like Simon Sinek says, sitting in the mud with you. Those are very, very far and few between. And if you don't take that inventory, then you'll fool yourself with having a lot of people who you deem your friends, and then come to find out when the going gets tough that you have no one who really cares about you, who's there when you need him. I learned that from a guy who, his name was Yuri, very popular guy, used to be a club promoter, had everybody, just the kind of Rolodex on his phone contacts, hundreds of people, thousands of people, and he knew because he used to be a club promoter, so he knew all the DJs and all the artists, he knew everybody. But when it's like his dad died, I was the only person who reached out to him. He had one fucking friend, one real friend who actually gave a shit about him. And you find that, again, if you surround yourself with people, you realize, dude, no one loves you. And I know that's a bold statement, but what I mean is they're not quality friends. They're not people who would really be there for you when you needed them, right? So I think if you're wanting to sort of mirror, shadow, walk in the same path, aligned with what I'm doing, it's creating a garden that is only inviting love. It's only inviting encouragement. It's only inviting support. It's only inviting the word yes to my life. And not as a yes man, not as a docile, agreeable, courtier, right? Yes, in the sense of unconditional love and support. Here's an idea. Hell yeah. How can we help? How can we bring this to life? That's going to be great. You're going to do a great job, right? People who, I watched an interview just yesterday. It was this interviewer asking a young, either Venus or Serena Williams, the tennis player, if she could beat her sister. And she was like, yeah. And then the guy was like, you seem really confident. And this girl, she's a child at the time. She's like, I am confident. And then he's like, why are you really confident? And he was like, almost making her second guess herself. The dad interrupts the interview and he's like, what the fuck are you doing? He said, she answered you that once she showed her confidence, let it be that. And it was like a video of a guy doing like a reaction to it. And he said something that was so spot on. He said, confidence, especially as a child, can take years to build. And one motherfucker can shatter that in minutes. And that's the importance of you curating your reality, of the people who you allow into your garden, into your life, or people who, and I've had this firsthand, it's just having so many people in my life who make me feel so hard to love, right? So hard to be complimented, so not valuable, so taken for granted, so uncomfortable in my own skin, so that it takes so much effort to, love, to be a friend, to, whatever. So I only want people in my life who make me feel effortless to love, couldn't be more comfortable in my own skin, confident being myself. And if you have those people, dude, fanning your flames, who could you be? What action could you take? Who could you then impact by you being, 10x, 100x, shining that much brighter, right? It all comes from you doing that inventory and taking account, who are you allowing and tolerating to be a part of your life? Is it just weeds? If so, I'd recommend you cutting them the fuck out of your life. And with that, that is the 14th Law of Power. Targ House, rat life. Anyone can escape. It starts with belief. I'm doing this, you can't see it, it's off screen. Anyone can escape. It starts with belief and the courage to pursue. That is rat life. We're all gonna make it.